Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Myers, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar for Tools for Teachers and Other Formative Assessment Resources at Your Fingertips, brought to you by the California Department of Education. This webinar is the fourth in a series of Tools for Teachers Shared Practices webinars that will be occurring throughout the school year. We'll share a little more info about the final webinar at the end of today's presentation. Before we hand it off to our very knowledgeable presenters, we want to address a few housekeeping items. First, all participants are muted and the chat is turned off today. We will be collecting questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom. Please submit any questions that you might have there, and the presenters will do their best to answer all of those questions. And they will be doing that at a few different points throughout their presentations. A copy of today's slides is available on our upcoming training opportunities webpage on CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org, and we'll also be putting a link to the Padlet into the chat. In fact, I'm going to do that for you right now. The Padlet contains the link to the slides as well as all the materials that will be mentioned throughout today's webinar. The Padlet will remain available through the end of February. We will be recording today's presentation with the archive of the presentation available for download on the CAASPP and ELPAC YouTube page and the CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org training opportunities pages. It usually takes 1 to 2 weeks after the meeting for this recording to be available. So with that, we will pass it over to our presenters for today. So please give a warm welcome to our first presenter, Sharmila Edwards. Sharmila?
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I am Sharmila Edwards, Education Programs Consultant at the Department of Education, California, of course. I'm joined by my colleague, Rebecca Bowers, as well as 2 other California educators, Noel Gutierrez of Palm Springs Unified School District and Adrian Coppola Caruso of Kings Canyon Unified Schools. We're excited to share with you about tools for teachers and other formative assessment resources available to California's educators. We will share information for 4 of the resources in particular. Today, we will feature 2 LEA showcases on using the Smarter Content Explorer and the Smarter Annotated Response Tool. We will pause for processing time and a short Q&A. Then we'll provide 2 demonstrations of the Interim Assessment Viewing System and the Interim Assessment Item Portal. Finally, we'll wrap up today's session with more time for Q&A. We realize that there are a lot of resources available to you. So CDE has released just last month a new tool that will help you to decide when to use each of them. This tool is designed to assist you in implementing and developing the formative assessment process in your classrooms. We've provided the Tools for Teachers and Other Formative Assessments online tools at a glance, a flyer, which highlights 7 of the available tools: the Tools for Teachers website, the Interim Assessment Item Portal, the Interim Assessment Viewing System, the Smarter Content Explorer website, the Sample Items website, the Smarter Annotated Response Tool, and the California Educators Reporting System Sandbox. This flyer also includes the links to each website where you will find the resources. It tells how the tool supports the formative assessment process. It tells whether a Test Operations Management System, or TOMS, login is required for access, and the applicable subjects and grade levels to which it applies. There are 3 ways to access this flyer. And I'll take a moment to show you. All right, so the 3 ways to access, the first is always, of course, on the Padlet for this particular webinar. In the first or leftmost column of the Padlet, which hopefully you can see it, you have a column labeled the flyer and PowerPoint presentation, with a note to show its location on both the CDE Tools for Teachers webpage and the CAASPP.org Interim Assessments Resources webpage. And now I introduce to you Our first LEA Showcase presenter, Ms. Noel Gutierrez.
Thank you so much, Sharmella, and good afternoon, everyone. I am the secondary ELA and literacy instructional coach for Palm Springs Unified School District. This is my 7th year in this position, and I work primarily with ELA teachers grades 6 through 12, but because literacy spans all subjects, I work with teachers from all content areas. So today, I am excited to show you one of my most favorite instructional resources as a coach, the Smarter Content Explorer, which is the 4th resource listed on your flyer. This website can be accessed through Tools for Teachers, but because it is a public website, you can also share it directly without having to enter a username or password. And it is full of wonderful resources that can help teachers align their instruction and formative assessments to the summative Smarter Balance assessment students take in spring. So some history about the resources available on the Smarter Content Explorer. In 2015, Smarter Balance released some amazing things. They were primarily used by test writers and reviewers, but were available for all educators to read. So I started training teachers on how to find them and how to use them. To me, this was an absolute goldmine because it helped us teachers better understand the Smarter Balance assessment. Resources that we started using included the item stems, the target evidence statements, short constructed response rubrics, sample test items, assessment blueprints, construct relevant vocabulary lists, and full write rubrics, just to name a few. The challenge was, however, that these documents weren't always easy to access. They were located in many places, and you had to download multiple zip files and open multiple PDFs. And a lot of the documents were very technical and very lengthy. However, with the development of the Smarter Content Explorer, everything now is included in one easy-to-use platform. So everything I will talk about today can be found at contentexplorer.smarterbalance.org. And as I mentioned before, you can also access it through Tools for Teachers. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the home page right now so I can point out where to find some great resources. Then I will briefly show you just a few ways we use some of these in my district. So this is the home page of our Smarter Content Explorer. And I'm going to start by going up to the link that says Test Development at the top. Don't overlook this. There are some amazing resources that you can use. Let me click on it. Well, it's not allowing me to go. So I hope that you have a chance to look at that part on your own. On the test development, you'll find things like the blueprints, and you will also find information about accessibility. And at the bottom of the test development link, you will also find the vocabulary resources, which I will talk about in a second. In addition to that, there are other resources that I want to highlight real quick. So first, I'm going to start by selecting a grade. And I'll stick with 8th grade. And because I am an ELA coach, I'll select English Language Arts. I'm going to select a claim. So we'll stick with claim 1, which is reading right now. And it's taking just a moment. On here again, I won't have time to show everything to you. However, you will be able to look at this on your own afterwards and pull up some of the amazing resources. So I'm going to stop the share real quick and try to do that again, just because I would like you guys to see this. Okay, well, here we go. Oh, an unexpected error has occurred. I apologize for that. Hopefully we can come back and show that to you later. But two things that I would like to share with you on there are going to be the item stems, which are question stems that the writers use when developing the questions. And there's also something called the target evidence statements. So we're going to go ahead and talk about both of those. Amy, if you want to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint right now, and we can go back to that. So once you visit that website, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. I want to talk first about how we use the item stems that you can find on the Smarter Content Explorer. So using item stems for ELA text-dependent questions is super helpful. I have worked with teachers over the years writing questions for their lessons using these stems. Here's one example using a stem from Target 7, Language Use, and the poem "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman. The Smarter Content Explorer item stem states, what does the word or phrase, targeted word, targeted phrase, suggest about, provide characters' names, the narrator, the setting, the text, etc. From the stem, we wrote the text-dependent question, what does the phrase, for you bouquets and ribbon wreaths, for you the shores a crowding, suggest about the setting? First, teachers selected a few stems from the Smarter Content Explorer they wanted to use that aligned to the standards they were preparing to teach. And then they used the text the students would read to fill in the brackets. Using these stems that you find on there is great because they expose students to the language they will see on the state assessment. But more than just preparing kids for the state test, the stems also include really good critical thinking questions for students to discuss in groups. When planning lessons with the stems, it does take time at first, but the more you use them, the easier it becomes. Teachers I work with also use these stems when writing or revising common assessments. Using these stems for text-dependent questions and on assessments ensures there is a direct correlation between our first instruction, our common formative assessments, and the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment students take in spring. Recently, some of our history and science teachers have also been using the informational text stems in their lessons, which really supports literacy skills for our students. Now, although they are a little bit different, on the next slide, you can see that math uses these as well. So using the item stems for mathematics may come out in a couple different ways. Here's an example. The equation shown has an unknown number. Blank divided by 2/3 equals 3/4. This equation true. So there are two ways that math teachers might use the stem. First, they may use it as a frame to help them write their own questions, mimicking the layout of the Smarter Balance item stem. Additionally, they may use the example question as an independent warm-up or as a collaborative we-do activity. Again, this exposes students to the types of questions and the wording they will encounter on the Smarter Balance assessment. Another resource that teachers love is the Smarter Balance construct vocabulary list. There are lists for math and for ELA grades 3 through 8 and high school. And these lists are found under that test development link at the top right-hand corner of the homepage. All of the terms on these lists are terms students will come across on the summative assessment. The words and phrases on these lists can be used in a variety of ways, including on word walls, for engaging vocabulary activities, and as a Cites Word of the Week. For word walls, teachers post the word, the definition, and sometimes an image for students to refer to during instruction. The word wall is in use as a reference when students are having discussions and answering questions. Some teachers also use these terms for engaging vocabulary activities, such as total physical response, in which groups of students come up with a gesture for the word or phrase they are learning about. If you aren't using these for your instruction, I definitely recommend that you check them out. Last year, I started working with one of our middle schools on Unpacking the Standards. Although we unpacked the standards years ago, the site I've been working with has some new teachers, so it's important for us to do this again. And when unpacking the standards, it was important that we didn't just look at just the standards, which is a traditional method. That can be good, but it may give an incomplete idea of what the standard is or how it's assessed by Smarter Balance. So we incorporated several resources from the Smarter Content Explorer on our unpacking document for each target in each claim. In the first column, we wrote down the target and the evidence statements. The evidence statements are like objectives that you can use while teaching. And the target evidence statements are descriptions of what students must do to demonstrate proficiency on the state test. We also wrote out the standards. Then we selected some item stems that could be used for questions during the lesson. When looking at all of that together, we were able to create a list of academic vocabulary students would need and compare those words to what was on the construct vocabulary list. We recorded those in the last column, PLC notes. Finally, under instructional notes, we included ideas and strategies when teaching the standards and targets. If you would like to see an example of a filled out form, please check out the Padlet link. Also, I just want to let you know the teachers I work with really appreciated taking the time to do this, both new and experienced teachers. Although it took time, they said they felt better prepared for teaching when they just looked at the standards in isolation. And it also prepared them to create quality formative assessments that were better aligned to the Smarter Balance assessment. So bringing it all together now, here's an example of a whiteboard students can refer to that includes several components we talked about. The teacher has the agenda listed on the left-hand side with the standards underneath it. The agenda includes some of the strategies we came up with during our unpacking. The teacher also has learning objectives listed, which are derived from the target evidence statements you can find on the Smarter Content Explorer. And there are also terms from the vocabulary list, which include the definitions. This board is a reference for students to refer to during instruction. Students may look at these key terms when the teachers ask them a question using those item stems. It also allows students to see how their learning objectives are connected to their academic vocabulary. Now, I know that was a lot of information, so if you have any questions in the future, please feel free to email me. You will find my email address on the Padlet. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Adrienne to show us some amazing resources.
Thank you so much, Noelle. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adrienne Capola, and it's truly a pleasure to be here with you all today. For 5 years, I taught 7th and 8th grade English language arts for Fresno Unified School District. Currently, I am in my 2nd year as a district instructional coach for Kings Canyon Unified. Some of my job duties include collaborating with new and struggling teachers to support them developing solid classroom management strategies and increase student engagement. Additionally, I work alongside with teachers, instructional coaches, and administrators to ensure our curriculum is rigorous, engaging, and aligned with Common Core state standards. But what I love most about my position as an instructional coach is that it allows me to have the opportunity to do what our teachers have very little to no time to do, is research the latest instructional resources that support student learning. And one of the many gems I found, and I now pack in my teacher's toolkit, is the Smarter Annotated Response Tool. I never leave home without it. On a serious note though, this tool has been instrumental to the development of our students' writing. Let me show you how. So first things first, where do we locate the Smarter Annotated Response Tool? Well, I like to type smarter.smarterbalance.org, and that takes me directly to its homepage. It should be noted that the website information is also included on the flyer for your convenience. Good news, this is a publicly available website. Therefore, you will not need your TOMS login to access its resources. This also means that you have the ability to manipulate the resources to meet the needs of your students. If you need to put it in a Google Doc, form, or slide, you have the ability to do so. Just make sure you give attributions to Smarter Balance. The primary function of this tool at the moment is to better support writing instruction for grades 3rd through 11th. More specifically, this tool focuses on the full essay portion of the performance task. So let's dig right in and explore why Kings Canyon Unified School District teachers are utilizing this valuable tool. So why use this Smarter Annotated Response Tool? Well, I have several reasons to share with you why. The first is this tool provides a writing prompt to analyze. I remember when I was teaching English language arts and my students had the performance task, and I always wondered, what is the task asking them to do? Well, you now have the ability to see what a writing task is, similar to the performance task on Smarter Balance. In addition, you also have the ability to look at the sources that go with the writing prompt. So students can look at what exactly the text looks like that is aligned with the prompt. In addition, the students also have the ability to look at written responses from other students. So now you have a prompt to look at, you have some text that goes with the prompt, and you also have examples of student responses to that particular writing task. Finally, we know writing can be very subjective. So not only do we have exemplars of students' written responses, but we also have scoring annotations that justify, well, why was that essay scored the way it was? And just to clarify, the scoring of these performance tasks are scored in 3 different categories. The first is organization and purpose. The maximum points a student can get is a 4 for that category. We have evidence and elaboration. Again, they can get 4 as the maximum points. And we have conventions where they can get a 2. So the highest achievement level a student can score on their performance task, the full essay portion, is a 4.42. So I know when I looked at their scores and I thought, they should be getting 10s, but a 4.42 is the highest achievement score possible for the performance task. Finally, it also provides a holistic rubric of writing. So it is aligned with the expectations of Common Core state standards. So whatever standards that you're teaching your students for different genres of writing, the rubric is also aligned with those Common Core state standards. And just like to mention one more, because these are public materials, you can manipulate these resources to meet the best needs of your students. Okay, so where do we start? Well, our district, with our teachers, we like to backwards map. This is where we deconstruct the prompt. Most prompts lack details and direction. I've noticed in a lot of the curriculum, there are single question prompts. However, Smarter Balanced Annotated Response Tool prompts, there's a lot of detail, a lot of information given. Therefore, we need to teach our students how to properly deconstruct a prompt. Some of the things that we're looking for when we're deconstructing a prompt with students is, well, what genre is this asking us to look at? For example, a prompt might say, well, this is a realistic fiction. So these are some good talking points to have with your students say, well, what's a realistic fiction? What type of writing is that? Narrative, yes. So what's the purpose of a narrative writing? To entertain. And so you just will have some dialogue with students and have some good conversations about what types of genre that they're going to be writing to. In addition, Smarter has more than just what type of genre, but they're also, well, who are you writing to? Well, for example, if it's a narrative, they might be writing to a social studies exhibit. It might also include, what does the structure look like? They're asked to write a multi-paragraph essay. Does that mean we're writing one paragraph? No. Okay, so what should this look like? Also, there's a very unique part of these prompts as well, where they include a persona. So the students aren't just writing any narrative of their choosing. In fact, they're given a persona. For example, a narrative might be where you are now taking the role as a climber who's climbing Mount Everest and something happens. So Smarter Balance takes you right into that narrative and picks up where you should be. So I included a document that our district uses to analyze writing tasks in the Padlet so you can get an idea of how we like to deconstruct our writing prompts. After we've deconstructed our writing prompt and now we're writing with a purpose and we know exactly what we're writing to, we then start to read with a purpose. So we were given a narrative writing prompt and then we were given some sources. So now we're planning our writing with our students. What I like to do is I now print out the sources and give my students a copy. With those copies, we're reading with a purpose. We're annotating, highlighting the sources. I like to model with our students how to properly utilize thinking maps, also graphic organizers. How are we going to capture details if the genre is a narrative and it's asking us to include details from the sources and it's about Mount Everest? I might choose to use a circle map where I'm asking students to include details from source 1 that they're going to include into their very own realistic fiction. So if we read source 1 and it mentions, oh, it's freezing in Mount Everest and they're above the clouds and they have to use an ice pick, I might use those in a circle map to capture those ideas to make sure that I include those details in my very own essay. I just want to know also, I have included some thinking maps that we've used with our students in the Padlet as well. Finally, our students have deconstructed the prompt. They are writing with a purpose. They're reading with a purpose. They've drafted their essay. Where do we take it from here? Well, we bump it up. As I mentioned before, Smarter Annotated Response Tool provides students and teachers with examples of high, medium, and low student responses. What I like to do is print out a high, which would be a 4.42, a medium, and a low. I don't label it as a high, medium, and low. I put it on separate documents and I say document A, B, or C. I then take the rubric and have the students fill out an additional document, and they have to rationalize and say, is document A an example of a high, medium, or low based off of the rubric? Instead of saying, well, document A is a good essay, now they're forced to use the rubric to help them justify the scoring of that essay. So the students will say, well, document B is a low because it was missing this, this, and this, which was on the rubric. But here's where the magic really happens. Then the students take their essay and they hold it up against the rubric. And now they also have these examples of student responses, and they can look and go, I thought I had a high, but looking at these examples, I didn't have a high. And looking at the rubric, I see where I need to make those corrections. And we make those corrections and we bump up our writing to the next level. I've also included the document that we use called Bump It Up in the Padlet as well. Feel free to check it out. Thank you guys so much for your time. I know that was a lot of information in such a short amount of time, but now I would like to hand it right back over to Mrs. Sharmila Edwards.
Thank you, Noelle and Adrienne. We've just covered a lot of information about the Smarter Content Explorer and the Smarter Annotated Response Tool. And we'll switch gears in just a moment to provide demonstrations of 2 additional educator tools. But before we dive into this next section, let's pause to return and see the website that Noelle referenced.
Okay, thank you so much. Seems to be up and running now. So just to show you where some of those resources were, on the home page, when I click the test development link at the upper right-hand corner, and I scroll down, and there's a lot of information that you will find useful when you have a chance to look at it. We have blueprints, interim assessment information, which Becky Bowers will be going over in a second, information about accessibility, some rubrics that you might find helpful for ELA and for math, as well as here are those vocabulary lists that I was speaking about, one for ELA and one for math. You can check those out. Now I'm going to scroll up to the top and show you where I found the item stems. I will go back to the home page. I'm going to select a grade, so I'll stick with 8th grade. I will go with English Language Arts for my subject. For now, I'm going to go to the claim, and I'm going to select claim 1, which is our reading claim. From there, I'm going to select a target. And then when I select a target, it's going to take me to a list of the targets, and I'm able to select one of the targets, whatever one I'm working on. So for example, I know it's loading right now. Lots of people seem to be on it right now, so it might take just a minute. From the target, however, when I choose a target, for example, if I choose target 2, which is central ideas, and I scroll down to the bottom where it says task models, that is where you will find the target evidence statements, which can be used for your objectives. And that's also where I can find the item stems, which you can use for your text dependent questions. So I think it is a little overwhelmed right now, but I'm glad everyone's checking it out. Oh, here we go. Let's try that one more time. Walking through. Thank you for your patience. Oh, it might be off. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Miss Edwards, just because I think a lot of people are accessing it. But again, once you select target, and then you can select the target that you wish to work on, scroll down to the bottom where it says task models, and that's where you will see the target evidence statements, as well as where it will say item stems. Click on the more stems, and you will see a list of stems that you can select from.
All right. Thank you, Noelle, for that. And now it appears that the majority, if not all of our questions were actually answered. And the final 2 that are waiting have someone actually typing in answers there. So if you've not seen the responses, please feel free to go back and to look at the Q&A to find the answers to those questions there. We have none at this moment for live answers, but as you can tell, we've got a few people who are looking through the Q&A feature to identify the questions that we will address both live and in typing. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Rebecca Bowers for demonstrations of the 2 additional resources included on your flyer, the Interim Assessment Viewing System and the Interim Assessment Item Portal. Ms. Bowers.
Great, thank you so much, Sharmila. As Sharmila mentioned, we've been going over a lot of tools and very fast. There's a lot of great information on each of these websites. So if you haven't seen the Padlet in the left-hand column, there is the flyer. The flyer has direct links to every tool that we're sharing today and more, direct links to tools for teachers, the item portal, the viewing system that I'm going to go over now. So if you haven't been to that Padlet, check it out. The PowerPoint's there, the direct link to the flyer, as are all the supplemental resources that were described today. So take a look. I know it's a lot of content. Also, our contact information for each one of the presenters today is located on that Padlet above the column for the tool that is shared. So if you have a question and we went over it too quickly, do reach out to the presenters. They can go ahead and respond to your question after the fact and when you've had more time to digest this information. So I'll hop into our next two demonstrations. Before we dive into this one, I do want to note that up until this point, our presenters have shared two amazing tools that are both available on public websites. So they don't require secure login credentials to access. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and show you two secure sites or tools that do contain live interim assessment items. So they must, they do require the appropriate TOMS login credentials, as Sharmila mentioned earlier. So please take note. All interim assessments are not for public use, display, or distribution, and the items must not be copied into third-party systems without the permission of Smarter Balanced. So you'll want to keep that in consideration as I'm going through these next two tools. Again, just to clarify, the two earlier tools are on publicly available sites. They use sample items for the tool that Adrian shared. So you don't have to worry about security for those, but now we do as we're turning over a new leaf with these new tools. So please also note that you may want to keep in mind that the interim assessments, unlike the summative assessments, can be administered in both standardized and non-standardized ways. So the tools I'm about to share with you can be used in a formative way, embedded into instruction to support teaching and learning. So it's not just at the end of the school year do students see these items. The interims can be used throughout the year and used in that formative manner. I'll touch on a few ways this can be done as I share the tools with you. So I'll begin by showing a short video demonstration of the interim assessment viewing system. This is a great system for educators who want to view the interim assessments without actually administering them to students. So why would a teacher want to do that? Well, they may want to preview the interim assessments to determine which ones they do want to administer. It's great to take a sneak peek to see which ones do fit the curriculum that your students are working on. You can also project these interim assessments and use it in that non-standardized format I was explaining, showing the interim assessments through this viewing system for the whole class to see and walk students through an interim assessment together. This is a great opportunity to do those non-standardized formats. So we'll go ahead and show you the video. As you're watching, take note of different ways you can use this system in your own context to provide support for student learning. So go ahead and we'll roll the video.
Welcome to the demonstration of the Interim Assessment Viewing System. We will begin by selecting the Interim Assessment Viewing System button located on the Interim Assessment Administration Resources webpage on the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress portal website. This will take you to the TOMS logon screen. In the logon field, type in an email address that includes the domain for the local educational agency, or LEA. Next, type in the TOMS password in the password field and then select Secure Logon. This will take you to a new screen that will prompt you to select a grade. For demonstration purposes, we'll select Grade 6. A new screen will appear with all the Interim Comprehensive Assessments, or ICAs, and Interim Assessment Blocks, or IABs, available for Grade 6 in English Language Arts Literacy, or ELA, and Mathematics. Despite the message under each title, this is Opportunity 1 of 99, there are no limits on the number of times users can view any interim assessment. For demonstration purposes, we will select a Grade 6 ELA Brief Rights IAB. A new screen will present with a ribbon that displays a progress bar and the percentage of the test that is completed. To move to the next question, select the Next button. When the end of the test is reached, a pop-up window will provide a message that there are no more items to view on the test, and you will be directed to select the Finished button. Select OK. You will then be redirected to the page to select the Finished button. Another pop-up window will appear that states, "You have reached the end of the test." Click Yes to continue to the next page. Click No to keep working on the test. Select Yes at this juncture. A window will then appear that allows you to revisit any of the items. To exit the test, select the button labeled Submit Test. A pop-up window will appear asking if you are done reviewing the test. Select Yes. Once you confirm completion of the test review, you are prompted to log off. To view an additional interim assessment in the viewing system, you must log on again to select and review another test. This marks the end of our demonstration. Thank you for viewing this demonstration video on the Interim Assessment Viewing System.
Great. So I hope you had a few ideas that crossed your mind when you were watching that video of ways that you can use the viewing system in your local context. Perhaps it might be beneficial again to jump into that interim assessment viewing system for yourself to view the interims to decide which ones align with your instruction and which ones you want to administer to your students. Or maybe, as mentioned before, it might help you become familiar as a teacher with the test delivery system that the students are using at the end of the year. So why wait until that time? Another way is, as mentioned before, you can use it with students in that non-standardized format, showing the items to the students, walking through an interim assessment together, and making sure they're familiar with the different accessibility supports that are embedded throughout, because those are available in this system as well. So whatever you use it for, make sure it's appropriate to your setting, and that would be recommended. So the video of the viewing system is part of CDE's interim assessment video series. And this is a series which features 5 video modules that support educators' use of interim assessments. The direct link to this video, as well as the rest of the interim assessment video series modules, can be accessed straight from the CDE webpage, but I know there's a lot of pages thrown at you today. You can go straight to the Padlet, and underneath the interim assessment viewing system column, there's a direct link to the rest of the video series right there for you. I highly recommend checking those out. There's a lot more than just the viewing system, and great video demonstrations as well. So now I'm going to do a quick demo of another great tool available to educators. This is our final tool for the day, our 4th one. So I know it's hard to keep track, but 4 great tools. This tool is the Interim Assessment Item Portal. I'll do a live demonstration of this tool in just a minute. And it was released just last school year. So this is a fairly new tool compared to the others. It can be extremely useful in helping teachers identify the specific interim assessment items that are aligned to the content of interest to them. This is most likely because it's aligned to the instructional unit that they're planning. So this great tool does allow teachers to easily browse all of the interim assessment items, and there are quite a few. You can narrow searches with filters such as grade, subject, test name, claims, targets, and even filter by content standard, which is excellent. Another great feature of this item portal is that it allows for the printing of actual interim assessment items individually or as a group. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute, as well as, or where to, and also the printing of answer keys. And who does not love answer keys, right? So you can get to this tool straight from the Tools for Teachers website. If you're not familiar with that website, it's okay. The direct link is also on the flyer that we've been sharing, which is on the Padlet. Everything's located, can be accessed from the Padlet. So I'll go ahead and steal the screen. Okay, so on this screen, I've already logged in. Again, since this is a secure site, I want to make sure that I'm using my Tom's login credentials for access. I've already done that, so I'm automatically taken here to the Interim Assessment Item Portal homepage. From this page, I can select any of this filtered information. So I'm going to select grade 7. I'm going to choose math for this demonstration. And I'm going to select the interim assessment block for geometry because I want to see as a teacher which items are going to be on that assessment. I can use the viewing system, which we just learned about, and see those items, or I can come here and find all those nitty-gritty details with the metadata. So I'm going to select geometry, IAB. I do have the option to filter even more by claim, target, and content standard. But for the sake of this demo, I just want to see what items are on that interim assessment block. So as I scroll down, there are many different item cards, and these item cards contain all of that great metadata, such as the claim, the target, the standard, the depth of knowledge, the difficulty level of the item, the answer key right there on the item card itself. Each item card has the item position number labeled. Scrolling down, there are many different items. This specific interim assessment block has 13 item cards, thus 13 items on the actual interim assessment block. So I can select any of these item cards if I want to by clicking on the item card itself to open up the actual item and see how it displays on the test or what it looks like. I can select it to print down here. I'm not going to open it up because it is a secure live test item and I can't blur it out here. So I'm not going to do that, but I do want to show you how to print an answer key. So I can select each individual item I want on that answer key, or I can select all from the top left. I'll do that now. 13 items all go into my print cart. So I'll select print cart. Then I have the option to move them up or down if I want to reorganize them. I don't, because I want to see the organization they are on the actual IAB. So down here, I'll keep them in that order. I'll select next. And in my print card, I have a couple options, but the one I want to show you now is the print options down below. I can print the items only, the answer key only, or the answer key and the items. So for the sake of this demo, I'm going to do answer key only and select print to PDF. While this PDF is being generated, I'm going to remember all that great metadata that was on those item cards for each individual item. And once this PDF generates, all that great information will be provided for me on this answer key. So there are 4 pages for this interim assessment block, and I have an answer key with the item numbers, the test name, just in case I forgot it, the answer key for each item, the claim, target, all that great metadata is right here for me. I have the option to either download it, I can print it, download it from the bottom as well. If you do either of those things, please remember these are secure materials. You can, if you do that, you want to make sure they're securely destroyed and not floating around the classroom somewhere, because they are secure for the secure interim assessments. So I'll close that out and we'll go back to the PowerPoint. And as we're doing that, I do want to make sure that just to mention that this wonderful tool is just another one in your toolbox. So it is a great tool for educators to become familiar with the content of the interim assessment. So what is on it? And it also helps when selecting which interim assessment you want to administer, or which one that you want to now go into the viewing system. And now you have your answer key right beside you. So as you're walking students through it in a non-standardized way, you can have your answer key and not be rushing to get those answers. They're all there for you. Again, secure materials though. All this information can be found on the Padlet under the interim assessment item portal column and the at-a-glance flyer. Also on the Padlet, I do want to note that there is a step-by-step direction document for creating an answer key with the steps that I demoed. So if I went too fast, I know this is a lot, go back to that Padlet, select the document for creating an answer key, which is in the title, and you can download the step-by-step, the direct link is there, all that material is there for you to have. I do want to note though, make sure that you are aware if the item, even though the item portal is a great tool for educators to use, I do want to make sure that it is the viewing system, the previous one I shared, that is the one you use to share the items with the students for that more authentic experience. You're seeing the items as they appear in the system. So make sure you use that when you're displaying it for the students. That way they have that experience. So if you have any questions about these tools, my contact information is on the Padlet underneath the names of these two tools. I'll pass it off to Sharmila, who will sum up all these great tools you've learned about.
Thank you, Becky. Just a reminder that the 4 tools that were shared during this webinar can be accessed from the Tools for Teachers and Other Formative Assessments Tools at a Glance flyer. I did see a few questions about the Padlet itself, and so I want to take a moment just to show that. Someone said to make sure that they're looking at the correct one. And so on your screen, you should see now what the Padlet itself looks like, minus my controls up top. But here in the very first column, you have the flyer and PowerPoint presentation. And so here is a link to the flyer itself. And again, 2 additional websites where you may find or will find the flyer. The PowerPoint will also be here in this first column. You also see that there's a column for each of the presentations with the information that the presenters shared would be available to you. Amy? So the flyer, again, is available in those multiple locations. The quick reference it contains provides important information for accessing the resources available in the Smarter Balanced suite of tools. When used in conjunction with the Smarter Balanced interim assessments, they are serving to assist teachers in planning instruction and supporting student learning. So be sure to take a look at each of them and see how you might best implement them in your own practice, bearing in mind the presentations and demonstrations you've seen on today. And now we return to your questions. Some, of course, have been identified again for answering online. And so you may have already received or seen those written responses for more specific questions. We have a few that remain. And so let's take a look. We have a question I'll call Noel Gutierrez first. Please describe claim versus test after choosing the grade level.
Thank you so much. So when you choose on the Smarter Content Explorer, you have a choice to choose a claim or a test. If you choose a claim, it will take you to a list of the targets. And from choosing a target, it will then list out the different targets that are within that claim. A target is a group of standards within that claim. So these are the targets for literary text that you see right here. And then when I select on one of those, I can scroll down. I can see the standards within that target. And when I click on the More button, it will take me to a link with more resources, including the item stems at the bottom under the task models. When I select test, it takes me to a link of the tests that Becky was referring to. So the tests for that grade level that are available. So I hope that answers the question. And on the Padlet, for those who want to go back and review the vocabulary or review where to find these item stems, I do have a link under the Smarter Content Explorer that walks you through the step-by-step directions that you can use to access it.
Thank you, Noel. We have 2 questions for Rebecca Bowers. Can we print out tests?
Yeah, thank you, Sharmila. So I think that was for Miss Lee. And so that question, the answer is yes, and that would be done through the interim assessment item portal, which is what I demoed for you. And you could use the how-to sheet, which is provided on the Padlet that has the step-by-step directions for generating an answer key, but it'll also get you to that site so you can print out instead. If you remember the option I showed, that it was items as well. So you can print just the items, you can print the answer key, or both of them together. I do want to caution though, if you are using it to print out the items, again, these are secure test items that are on the actual interim assessments, not summative, but interim, which they're still live, they still are secure. So please be cautious. We don't, they must not be copied into third-party platforms without the permission of Smarter Balance. They're not sample items. These are real live items. So if you're doing that, just be very cautious about where you're putting them, and make sure they're just seen by the students and the teacher.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'll stay with you. The next one asks from Kate Thompson, will I be able to access the Padlet after today, or does it go away?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Kate, too. So the Padlet will be available for the entire month of February. So we'll take it down like March 1st. And so you have a month to go back to that Padlet, get all the information you need. You can download the materials, save them to your desktop or however, but yes, for the month of February.
All right. We have, okay, we're getting some typed answers to some of the others. Where do we create our passwords? Is it still on Tom's? I want to take that one.
So yes, everything is through your Tom's login. So it's single sign-on. So that'll be the same access to get on Tom's to administer an assessment as well. All of these resources, tools for teachers, all the same. If you lost your password, you could go to Tom's, for example, and reset your password. But all single sign-on, all the same login. So great question.
Okay, we have a question from Deb Messina. Which resources would you recommend when preparing high school students for the reading inventory? That was actually a little bit earlier in the presentations.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that might be for one of our LEA staff members. If not, we'll hang on to these questions and we can respond, or if you want actually to reach out to us directly. I'm not sure of the answer to that one, but we can go ahead and reach out to you if you email us. Our emails are all on the Padlet, and we can get back to you on that one.
Okay, from Barbara Wetzler. Can we share the Padlet with other teachers at our school? Rebecca.
Great question. And yes, all of the material on that Padlet is free to be distributed. You can, none of it's behind a login, except for on the flyer. There are some websites that are listed on the flyer, such as the item portal and the other one I did, the viewing system, and both of those do require logins, but it'll tell you on the Padlet, each one that does require secure access and login credentials, it's listed right there on the flyer. But as far as the materials, the Google documents, yes, they are available to share.
And thank you. I'm looking again to see it. Oh, I am planning to use this webinar as professional development. Is there a certificate or email that will be sent to show proof of attendance?
So that there is no certificate for this specific webinar. I'm not sure if our behind the scenes folks, if there's a way to generate it for anyone who needs it, or
if you email the email address that's associated with this webinar, the CAASPP@scoe.net email address, then you should be able to just request that by email, and we can send an email saying that you attended.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, a little bit more Generalized. Daniel Gonzalez, if accommodations are entered into TOMS for students, do they also appear in the interim assessments?
Yes, and anyone else who wants to jump on can if they have more to add, but yes. So anything that's in TOMS will transfer to the interim assessments. You can use the interim assessments to practice some of those that are not listed in TOMS, but keep in mind it doesn't go the other way. So if you are changing some of the accessibility supports right there in the interim assessments, as the teacher, you can go in and practice with some of these tools that maybe you think might benefit the student. And so you're practicing in this interim assessment forum. And then if the student needs it on the summative, you would then need to go into TOMS and take the appropriate procedures, making sure it's on their 504 plan if needed, to get that on the summative. So you can practice with more tools in the interim, but just make sure it's not going to be an automatic backwards way, like to the summative.
Okay, and I think I'm going to take just one more as we are closing in on our ending time. Okay, so can you explain or show how I would use SIRS to see student scores and responses?
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to promote. Was that question real or was it planned? That we're actually going to have, and Amy will show a slide for it. We are going to have a webinar on March 1st, which is going to be a webinar all about that. So we're going to have 2 LEA representatives on the line to show how they use it in their local context, but to walk through getting the results in SIRS. So there isn't one way to use all these different tools. It's really what works best for you and your context. You can, get the results after you administer the interim assessment. You can get them straight from SIRS, and then you could go into tools for teachers and get an instructional resource or lesson plan. So many different ways. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I would definitely reach out to us if you have further questions using the information in the Padlet. I could talk more, or you can definitely sign up for that March 1st webinar.
Thank you, Becky. That completes all of our questions with answers. Back to you, Amy.
Thank you to all of our wonderful presenters today. Before we go, we would like to let you know about our final webinar in the series. All of these webinars are collaborations with educators from California schools and districts. And we're excited to work with people who are using these tools and share practices so that you can all benefit. On March 1st, we will hold our final webinar called A Teacher's Best Kept Secret, Interim Assessments and Tools for Teachers. The webinar will feature 2 educators who share strategies on how they use the interim assessments and the Tools for Teachers website together to support formative assessment practices. You can find the registration for this webinar under trainings on CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org. We will place that link in the chat if somebody could do that. Recordings for the previous webinars in the series can be found under trainings and then selecting past trainings and opportunities and materials. And in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to find the recording of this webinar there as well. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. We hope that you found the resources and tips to be useful today. If you have any remaining questions about resources shared here today, please feel free to reach out to caaspp@cde.ca.gov. And if you have any questions about the recording or registration for the upcoming webinar in March, you can email caloutreach@ets.org. The contact information for each of the presenters can be found on the Padlet. One final reminder that a copy of today's slides is available on our upcoming training opportunities webpage on the CAASPP.org and ELPAC.org websites. The Padlet also contains a link to the slides as well as all materials that were mentioned throughout today's webinar. The Padlet will remain available through the end of February. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.